Hello, we're speaking with mayoral candidate G.T. Bynum. G.T., you announced your candidacy yesterday. Why now?
Well, I think there's really a strong desire in Tulsa, among Tulsans, that we need to be more competitive nationally, that we need to be focusing on big things as a city, not just coasting on the work that that came before us have done. And I think there's a real opportunity to unify the city behind the pursuit of those big goals, and that's what appeals to me about running for, and that's why I decided to run this time.
Okay. You have said that you don't want to make this it's a campaign of issues, not a campaign of personalities. You don't want to make it personal. But
right.
In announcing yesterday, you're asking Tulsans to change leadership of the city. So that, in some degree, is a personal... why? Why should they consider changing from a mayor that's been in office 7 years to you?
Well, and I think it's important, though, to qualify, Mayor Bartlett hasn't announced one way or the other whether he's running. So I'm not running against him.
Okay.
What I am running against is a sense in the community of division and complacency. I think there is a real desire not to be focused on North Tulsa versus South Tulsa, East Tulsa versus Midtown or West Tulsa, but for everybody to be focusing on big issues that will make us nationally competitive, that will help us build the kind of city that we want our kids and our grandkids to have at their availability when they're deciding where they want to live. That's the kind of mayor that I want to be, and I think really because of the way that I've worked on the council with others, I have an opportunity and an ability to bring people together and to work on those kinds of things.
Okay.
The interest in me is not in just being mayor. I know enough about that job to know that the sacrifices that come with it and the trade-offs that come with it. I only am pursuing this because I see that opportunity to do some big things and to make a real impact for the good in the lives of people that live here.
So you talked about unity and complacency. What are the big goals that you referred to, and what do you believe the city could do if it was united? Is there anything specific?
Yeah, well, I think what you have to do is look at just even in our recent past. In the recent past, we've had city councils that people felt were divisive, either fighting amongst each other or fighting with the mayor. And in my experience, those times have happened when the city government wasn't focused on some big goal. There was a vacuum of direction and focus, and that's when people start nitpicking with each other. When we have been focused on big things, whether it was improve our Tulsa, in 2013, or on the vision renewal over the last 2 years, there's a lot less fighting because everybody is busy focused on some big goal. That's what appeals to me about it, and that is, I think, what unifies the city. It's not that just I'm so arrogant that I think everyone in Tulsa loves me personally and would just do whatever I suggest. That's not in the cards. But I've seen time and again, whether it's on the council or when I worked for Senator Coburn and Senator Nichols in the Senate, that when you're willing to focus on what you can agree on and try to build that up, there's not as much oxygen and time for you to focus on the things you disagree on. And the reality is, we're losing ground nationally to other cities right now. We're getting lapped on economic development by Oklahoma City, by Texas, even by Jinx in the last few months. And so you have to have that kind of focus on bringing the city together, focusing on big things. And one of those, to your question, to me, is education. My great-great-grandfather, R.N. Bynum, ran for mayor of Tulsa in 1898 because he wanted to found the first public school in Tulsa, and did that in one term over 2 years and then didn't run again. That was all he wanted to accomplish. I don't care if you talk to Republicans or Democrats or folks in North Tulsa or South Tulsa, everybody agrees that we need to do a better job in Tulsa in providing educational opportunities. And that isn't just Tulsa Public Schools. That is pre-K, where we have thousands of positions right now available for kids that are unfilled because either their parents don't know they exist or they don't know how to access them, all the way through high school and into college, where we're one of the largest cities in the country that doesn't have a public 4-year higher ed institution that does research. That whole gamut is something I think the city can have a leadership role in, pulling resources together and making a difference on. And if we want to grow in the long term, we've got to do that. The comparison I would make, we could go to California tomorrow and convince Apple Computer, the largest company in the United States, to move to Tulsa, to leave Cupertino and move to Tulsa. And if they did that, built their headquarters here, what history has shown us for the last 30, 40 years is that their employees would go live in the suburbs because they view that as where the greatest educational opportunities for their kids are. Well, we've done a lot on infrastructure in the last 10 years, in my opinion. We've done a lot on quality of life. But one area where the city, and it's not just in the 10 years, it's really in the last 100 years, has punted, is on being involved in education and having a role there.
Okay, let me stop you again.
Yeah.
So what, I think most people don't think of municipalities as having the power or the authority to do a lot in education. So remind me again, what specifically could the city do, do you believe, to make the education system?
And that's the problem, is people have given the city a pass historically by saying, well, that's something for the school board to handle, or that's something for the philanthropic community to handle, or that's something for the higher regents of education in Oklahoma to handle. And meanwhile, it's one of the greatest determinants of a city's growth, and the city government isn't taking a role in it. I'm not saying we go in and take over a school system or anything like that, but I do think we can have a leadership role in pulling all of those stakeholders together and developing more of an education strategy for the city. We don't have one today, but we need one if we want to be competitive with other cities around the country that do.
Is there an example is there something out there you wish was being done now that's not? Can you give me an example?
Oh, I mean, an easy one. Well, first I think it's important to point out what we do in education, which is provide crossing guards. People are not deciding to live in Tulsa because we have an amazing crossing guard program.
Right.
They're going to make a decision, and a lot of folks decide to live in Jinx or Broken Arrow because of their school systems. An easy one, though, right off the bat, is the shortage of kids that we have filling funded pre-K programs. That is it's been proven to show it has a tremendous return on investment for kids to prepare them for when they go into school to have pre-K programs. And the philanthropic community in Tulsa has been amazing on that. We're one of the national leaders in that. And yet we have thousands of slots unfilled in Tulsa. That's something that I think the city government, without any huge expenditure of money, but simply with the communication apparatus it has at its disposal, the ability to pull stakeholders that it has at its disposal, could really make a difference. And I think this speaks to probably, the mayor has two roles in a city. The formal role, which is, just the legal obligations that a mayor has under the city charter. But then there's a more informal role, which is that the mayor is viewed as a leader of the community. And that is something where I think I want to take more of a role in playing and helping when it comes to education.
Okay. Your other major platform issue is, and it ties into education, is bringing and retaining young professionals into town. What could the city do? What is the city? How could it improve that effort?
Well, a couple things. First, I think we have to have a city that young professionals want to live in. That when I talk with businesses, and whether it's small businesses or giant corporations that are here in Tulsa, they say their greatest challenge to growth here in Tulsa is simply recruitment. It's getting some kid who might be from Tulsa but graduated from a school somewhere else, or it's a kid who's graduating from high school here and deciding if they want to stay in Tulsa or go elsewhere, getting them to stay here. I think we've done a tremendous job in the last really 10, 15 years on quality of life. But what you have to remember is a lot of those people that are in their 20s are now preparing to start having families. And they're going to have to decide if they want their kids to grow up in Tulsa or the suburbs. Well, again, I bring this back to why our education strategy is so important. Because if they view the opportunities for their kids in suburban communities as being better to those in Tulsa, then they will leave. Now, my wife and I, we kind of had the opposite. We met working when I was working for Senator Nichols in D.C. She's from Norman and was working for Congressman Lucas up there, and that's how we met. But I grew up here always hearing and always believing that this is the best place in the world for your kids to grow up. And so when we decided to have kids, we moved back to Tulsa. I want to ensure that that continues to be the belief of future generations of Tulsans. If you don't have that, you will slowly decay. And the problem that we see in the last 10 years is that our population growth is stagnant. If it weren't for the growth in the Hispanic community in Tulsa, we would have lost population in the last 10 years. That is not a long-term trajectory that you want to be on, and I think it speaks to, again, sort of the complacency that people are concerned about that we have in Tulsa.
So the Chamber, as you know, is very active in trying to attract young professionals.
Yes.
Typro's organization is universally considered a big hit. So what's missing? What's not being done that could reach that goal that you have?
Well, I think it is more opportunities from a job standpoint for them. It's educational opportunities for them, whether it's grad school or on. And you also have to keep in mind, a lot of what we're doing, this recruitment aspect that we have to do, is because we don't have that four-year institution here that kids are graduating from. I say kids, I'm 38 years old. I'm 16 years older than these people. But I'm sure people that are in their 50s would call me a kid as well.
Right.
But that is a long-term handicap for us, that we don't have that. We have satellite schools in OSU Tulsa and OU Tulsa, and TU and ORU are both great schools, but they're both also private institutions that are relatively small. That is a handicap for us, and it's something that we have to have a real discussion about.
Does the city have the personnel to do that? You're trying to scrape together a budget every year.
Yep.
So the kind of things you're talking about, does the city have the personnel to do the things?
But again, I think this comes back to formal versus informal leadership. The city does have the personnel and the capability to convene the charitable philanthropic community, the state government, all the agencies that you would need to have that kind of conversation. The city has the ability to do that. The mayor has the ability to do that if they want to, and I do.
Okay.
I want to say though, you mentioned my other priority. My point there overall though is that the really overall message of this campaign is that I think we can unify Tulsa if we're willing to focus on the big things that will make us more competitive nationally. And that's kind of where the young professionals issue ties in, because unlike 100 years ago, somebody graduating from Central High School in Tulsa and deciding where they wanted to work generally just stayed here in Tulsa. That was the job market. Today, someone graduating from high school or from college, they can go anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world that they choose. And there are a lot of cities that have based their economic development strategy on being appealing from that standpoint. I think we've spent way too much time competing city versus county, city versus suburb, city versus even Oklahoma City, when the competition, the game that's being played right now is a national competition. It isn't Tulsa versus Jinx or City of Tulsa versus Tulsa County. I think we have a real opportunity to change the working relationship between the city and the county. And to me, that is a huge distraction right now from making us more competitive nationally. When you have the mayor and county commissioners fighting over a jail the entire time I've been on the council, basically, that's problematic. And I think it speaks to the fact that we have a system of governance that was created, it made sense 100 years ago when Tulsa and Broken Arrow were 15 miles apart. But it doesn't necessarily make sense today when the city and the county are mostly elected by the same people, they overlap, and they're providing a lot of duplicative services. I think we need to change the way they work together, and I have a great relationship with all the county commissioners and would like to work with them on evaluating that. There's a lot of waste and a lot of lost energy right now because we haven't been willing to look at the way the city and the county work together.
there are a lot of voters, as you know, who are all grown up, maybe getting close to retirement. Their kids are out, they've made their decisions about their children, have made their decisions where they're going to live. So they're not perhaps paying as much attention to attracting and retaining,
Yeah.
people. What do you say to those voters? Why should they consider you as a candidate? People who aren't typos.
Yeah. Oh, and make no mistake, I mean, my message on this campaign, it isn't that I heard from a couple young professionals who were frustrated. It is that I have heard frustration from, old folks, young folks, black folks, white folks, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what part of town they live in, doesn't matter if they grew up in Tulsa or they just moved here a few years ago. The concern is that, well, two things. One, that there isn't any major goal or focus that we as a community are pulling together and working toward. The second one, though, is very interesting. It's that your average person in Tulsa doesn't feel like they have the ability to make a difference in those large issues. You see our philanthropic community making a tremendous contribution in the Gathering Place, in our institutions, whether it's Gilcrease or Philbrook or in the Brady District, making life better from a social services standpoint. But for your person who doesn't have millions of dollars to contribute, but loves Tulsa and wants to make a difference, their vehicle to do that is the city. But I don't find a lot of people feeling like the city is asking for their help or is necessarily even interested in it. And I want to change that.
Okay. How, you said before, often you said, because you've thought about this race before, and in doing so you said that being the mayor of a city, or working on the local government, municipal government, you have, the attraction of it is you have the potential to really impact people's lives. In other words, no elected official or elected position has more impact on the day-to-day lives of people. How would people's day-to-day lives change if they decided to vote for you?
I think that, the main thing is that in their day-to-day lives, the biggest difference is that they will feel like they have the opportunity to make that difference and improve a city for the betterment of themselves and for their kids and their grandkids. The other, I think, probably major difference is that they're going to feel like they're in a city that is focused on being world-class again. That it, like we used to. So many of the great things that we enjoy in Tulsa are because people in our history decided that Tulsans deserve to have the best the world has to offer. That's why we quit drinking salty water out of the Arkansas River and built a pipeline to Spavinaw. It's why we built one of the first municipal airports in the country. It's why we have a world-class hospital system here. It's why we went and got TU, bought it and moved it from Muskogee to Tulsa. Because people felt like in those years, Tulsans deserved to have these things here and they weren't going to be limited by just what was immediately available. I want people to have that sense in Tulsa again, that the sky is the limit and that if we're willing to work together, you have people in office that are willing to aim high and not be afraid to shoot for greatness.
And what is that vision? I mean, I've asked you this, I think, earlier in the interview. Are there specific projects, whether it's improving education, what are these things you hope Tulsans can unite around? Are there specific ideas you have?
Yeah. No, I think that the three big ones to me immediately out of the gate are, again, having a comprehensive education strategy for the city, which is, by the way, no small task. That's a huge one. And really, there is nothing there right now. Second one is finishing the job on our streets and doing a better job of doing the work that we do. Tulsans have shown by and large that they're very encouraged and willing to fund, to build billions of dollars worth of street programs and invest in their city. But I think those projects are taking too long and the spacing of them is really negatively impacting people's businesses and their daily lives. And then the third one is that relationship between the city and the county, which is a conversation that we have not really had since Tulsa was incorporated in 1898. We have not really changed the nature of that relationship all that much, with a few sidebar exceptions in that time. These are all things that are holding us back right now. They're all things that are distracting us from being focused on being a world-class city.
You have been in politics locally for a while and worked in Washington a little, so you know kind of the lay of the land. Mayor Bartlett, and again, you made the point that he hasn't announced, but I think a lot of people think he's going to run. So let's, for the moment, assume that one of your competitors is Mayor Bartlett. There are a lot of Republican votes out there. How do you distinguish yourself from him? Again, we know that this is, the mayoral election is a nonpartisan election. But there's going to be people out there who are registered Republican who have supported Mayor Bartlett in the past. What's your argument to them as to why they should support you?
Well, first of all, I've supported Mayor Bartlett in the past. Okay, I worked on his first campaign for the city council 25 years ago. I was on the kitchen cabinet for his campaign for mayor 6 years ago. So I'm not running against Dewey Bartlett. I like Dewey Bartlett. I love sitting down and talking about Tulsa's history with Dewey. So I'm not running against him. And I know people want to make it that way, but I'm not doing that. I'm running because I think Tulsa overall has grown complacent and divided. And I think I have the ability to build that coalition of people that can change that. That's why I'm running. I don't, if I were being political and just wanted to be mayor, the smart thing is to wait, to not run right now, to just sit on the sidelines and wait and see what happens, and then maybe run someday and hopefully get in. But to me, there's a sense of urgency here. I mean, we're getting outpaced by Oklahoma City, by Texas, even by suburban communities. And I think there has to be a change there. And that's why I'm running. Because I think I have the ability to build that coalition that can help unite Tulsa, and that after the election can then focus on big things. And that's what, campaign in its most base sense is a marketing opportunity for a person to get elected to a job. Right. In a greater sense, though, a campaign is an opportunity to build that coalition that can not just win an election, but then can help make big changes through governance after the election. I'm trying to do the latter. I'm not interested in just getting elected and then getting to be mayor and not doing anything. My interest is in building that coalition that can help us lead.
GT, let's go back to the beginning when we asked you why now. Tell people a little about your family and where you are now. I found it interesting because I know your wife's in law school, so it's a busy time in your personal life, right?
Yeah, it's a little busy.
Where are you now, and did that play a role in this decision, or?
Oh, it was not an easy decision to make at all. And to me, it is not, the hard part of the decision was not so much about the campaign, because the campaign is a finite period of time. The hard part of the decision, and what swayed me in the past from running for mayor, was the personal impact that the time served in office has on your family. And I know all about that because my grandfather was mayor for 8 years. And I know the sacrifices that my grandmother, my mom, my aunts and uncles had to take for him to be able to serve and to do the job the right way. And so I'm mindful of the impact that it'll have on my wife and my kids. And that was honestly the hardest part of making the decision. But I also realized that there have been so many people before that were willing to make that sacrifice. And that is why Tulsa is what it is today, and it's why we decided to move home and raise our kids here, because there were people like my grandfather and many others who would devote themselves to making it a great city. And I had enough people approach me and tell me that they felt like I was the person that could do that at this point in time, that it was really it was humbling to have that people say that to you, but it also just felt a great call to do it. And I know you and I both read this book recently by David Brooks that is all about people setting aside, setting their own desires aside and transcending that and focusing on service to other people. And I drew great inspiration from that, and that's why I decided, that was really what helped me make the decision. I felt a calling to do it. Otherwise, again, if it were just political calculation, the smart thing to do is wait. But I did feel a real calling.
Okay. Hey, thanks for your time.
You bet.